Common sense buffs. It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without some dope content to react to. Run up the score by hitting the like button and the subscribe button, and let's get to 1,000 subscribers ASAP. Now, let's talk about what everybody's been waiting for, the 2025 Colorado Buffaloes. Coach Prime is back for year number 3, and this team looks different. Dare I say, deeper, stronger, and hungrier. I've been watching every move, and I'm here to break down why the Buffs are going from underdogs to Big 12 title contenders. So let's get right into it. Number one, something that is undeniable in college football, in marketing, in business, in the NFL, and that is the Prime effect. But before we talk about the future, let's rewind a little. When Coach Prime took over this program in 2023, Colorado was coming off of a 1-11 season, arguably the worst football team, and at the time possibly in the conversation for worst football program in the country. The culture was absolutely flat, the stands were empty, and people had simply stopped caring about this storied historical college football program. But Prime and the vision by Colorado and Rick George to bring Prime in brought new energy, a new vision, and of course, you had to believe. So in year 1, 4-8. But there were some signs that this team and this program as a whole were on the rise, including the big win against Nebraska, the thriller in TCU, which turned me into a fan of the Colorado Buffaloes, and of course, the national spotlight. You felt the shift even in year 1, given that 4-8 record. Now in year 2, Colorado made it to the Alamo Bowl, delivering on Prime's promise to Miss Peggy to get her to a bowl game. Now, you can't make this stuff up like Prime says, and it was a full circle moment from making a promise to actually delivering on it, even though the results of the Alamo Bowl were not what we were expecting. So Coach Prime just didn't change the record in Colorado, he also transformed the program. And now we're in year 3. Coach Prime has the extension under his belt. He has some new talent. The team is undergoing a leadership shift. And of course, they are now in the Big 12. And so the Buffs are positioned to make noise, not only in conference, but at the national level. So in order for the Buffs to really hit those high expectations this year, which for me is to see them in the Big 12 championship, the first thing that this team needs to establish is who's going to be the next QB1. Is it going to be Kaidon Salter or Julian Juju Lewis? And that's the biggest question, because guess who one of those two individuals might be replacing? That is the one and only Shedeur Sanders. So enter Kaidon Salter, the transfer from Liberty. Last year, Salter put up 2,876 passing yards and 32 passing touchdowns, and also added 1,064 yards on the ground with 12 scores. That's 44 total touchdowns that Kaidon accounted for. So he is definitely a true dual threat quarterback. You hear a lot of people who they talk about as a dual threat quarterback in college football and even in the pros, but they're not putting up Kaidon Salter numbers, both in the air and on the ground. But of course, he's coming from a different level of football, and he does need to adjust to that power 4 speed. Now, no problem there. There are many guys who go from Liberty onto a Power 4 program and have success. So I don't doubt that there's going to be some transition involved, but he's definitely going to be successful at this level. And what's going to be extremely important is how OC Pat Shurmur is going to adjust that scheme to fit his legs and not just his arm. Now, of course, you have the 5-star phenom who is jostling in this QB battle to replace Shedeur Sanders, and that's none other than Julian Juju Lewis, who threw for 3,094 yards and 48 touchdowns in his last season of high school ball. He already has the mechanics, and he has the football IQ and poise beyond his years, and he's also got some fire, right? He's also got some competitiveness in him, even though he wears it along with his quiet personality. But let's be real. Right? You can't expect either one of these guys to be Shedeur 2.0. You certainly can't expect that of a freshman quarterback. and you certainly don't see maybe the same arm talent or pure pocket passer that Shedeur was in Kaidon Salter's game. So the offense has to evolve, and this is going to be a challenge for Coach Prime. Where Coach Prime and Pat Shermer need to lean more into each quarterback skill set depending on who wins the starting job. I'd love to see more RPOs and definitely, for the love of God, more designed runs in a rushing attack that was lacking last year, and a passing system that doesn't ask these QBs to carry the entire load. We don't know if these QBs are built like Shedeur is to be called upon to win every single game, because you either have a porous line or you have no running game or a lack of commitment to the running game long term. So Salter and Lewis can win games. They're not going to be able to win those games consistently, though, if they're being asked to be something that they're either not or not ready to be this year. The other thing that we need to have in the Big 12 in order to make that playoff game is going to be defensive line dominance. I know Prime has always been focused on this area, and if there was ever a bright spot, and there were many last year, but the bright spot we want to continue to see as fans become even brighter in 2025 is the defensive line. This group set the tone in 2024 for the overall defensive play. And I expect that it's going to be the same, or not even expect, it needs to be the same and even better in 2025. And leading the charge was somebody who in the transfer portal, I believe, was like the top, if not in the top three defensive lineman. And that's none other than Jeheim Oatis, the 6'5", 328-pound transfer from Alabama. There's a little bit of Bama to Boulder happening when it comes to that defensive line. So he is going to be a certified problem in the trenches, but he's not going to be alone. So no longer of this dependence on any one player to make a unit great. What I love about the defensive line of Colorado is that we have some depth here. And some of these names you should recognize because they had breakout seasons last year. And that's none other than Arden Walker on the defensive end, Amari McNeil at defensive tackle, and Tafiq Thomas, who I've really enjoyed watching develop from last year to this year under the tutelage of none other than Warren Sapp. And I think Tafiq Thomas is poised to really get his name called a lot this year as part of a 2-deep, potentially 3-deep rotation on that Colorado defensive line. He's also joined by Anquan Barnes, another Alabama transfer on that defensive line, and my own dark horse. And that's none other than Quincy Wiggins on that defensive end, former LSU Tiger, with who I think probably has one of the highest ceilings on that entire football team. If he puts it all together, you better look out for that guy on Saturdays. He's going to be absolutely a problem for tackles to deal with, both with his size, his speed, and if he can add a few moves, again, with Warren Sapp as his teacher, I think he could be a problem. This group has something it hasn't had in previous years, and that's both size, depth, and SEC level strength in the trenches. Now, I'm not going to get out over my skis and say the entire line has that kind of depth, but they definitely have, at least for the first two rotations, people that are going to give you players that are going to give you a lot of problems on that defensive line, whether it be in a bull rush or guys who could pass rush with some speed from the edges. And I think they're just going to continue to get better this year. That defensive line on the defensive side of the ball is one of the things that's going to help get the Colorado Buffaloes into that Big 12 championship. Now, offensive side, we know we talked about QB specifically, but, we could always talk about the offensive line. We could always talk about the running back room. On the defensive side of the ball, we talked about the D-line, but we could also talk about the linebackers and the secondary. We'll cover those other units in subsequent videos. But one of the things that I love about what Prime is doing in year 3 is that he's really turned on the recruiting. So in year 1, maybe the knock was, hey, you can't build a football team. You can't turn around a team relying on the transfer portal. He was able to be successful, albeit not as successful as he desired. In year 1, the team got better, went from 1-11 to a 4-8 season. Next year, he continues his recruiting. This time, he does go back to the portal to rebuild things like the offensive line, which wasn't that good. He picked up some other players in the portal like LaJohntay Wester, like Will Shepherd, which really added some dynamism on the outside, and a couple more weapons for Shedeur Sanders to go to, in addition to Travis Hunter. But what I love to see this year is a great combination of transfer portal and then some big names out of high school. We already mentioned Juju Lewis at the quarterback spot, but I think one of the things that Coach Prime is probably going to get recognized for more, and maybe even the coaches on his staff are going to get recognized for, is that they're getting up to speed with recruiting. And that entire recruiting team in Boulder, the rave reviews are in when recruits go on campus for their official visits or unofficial visits. They tend to make an impression on them. And who doesn't want to play, especially if you're coming in from high school with the promise to play? And Coach Prime has the track record, the history of playing freshmen as well. So that has to get you excited if you're a highly touted, highly recruited player coming out of high school. So on the offensive side of the ball, which Prime is continuing to iterate on, we'll do an entire episode on the new offensive line. But he was able to pick up Carday Smith, 4-star offensive lineman. I think he plays tackle out of Alabama, and Chauncey Gooden, who's an absolute road grader at an interior offensive line position, probably going to play one of the guard positions, who was a 4-star out of Tennessee. So you get a 4-star out of Alabama, you get a 4-star out of Tennessee. That means you're competing at a high level for the top recruits. And these two, as they develop, as they grow into their bodies, as they learn the defensive system, and as they get more coaching from those great coaches on the D line, on the O line, they're going to continue to improve, and they could be anchor offensive linemen in the near future next year, maybe at the latest by their junior seasons. The defensive front also, because guys want to come and play for the coaches on the defensive front, included London Merritt, who Colorado was able to get from Ohio State. He was originally committed there, and then he ultimately decided that Colorado was a better fit for him. Alex McPherson, both guys out of IMG Academy. I keep seeing on for some other Colorado channels and content creators talking about the IMG to Boulder pipeline. I really think that is developing and is going to continue to develop with the 2026 class. So the defensive front is getting deeper with London Merritt, Alex McPherson, and Christian Hudson is a guy who doesn't get talked about very much, but I love him at that defensive tackle position. And I think across the line, there are going to be a lot of players who watch the success of definitely London Merritt and Alex McPherson in this year, but Christian Hudson may find himself somewhere in that rotation if that defensive line is playing really well and you can get more guys play time because maybe the team is ahead, and you can see what the Colorado Buffaloes freshmen can do in a college football game. So I definitely have my eye out watching for Christian Hudson and his development this year. The guy who I feel like is my favorite freshman, and that's because I have a bias for defense, is TJ Branch, the 4-star safety from Miami, who brings a lot of range. I believe he's 6'3" and a lot of toughness. And you watch well-off videos and then you watch interviews with guys like Cameron Silman Craig, and they ask him about who are the guys in that safety room who have really impressed you. And the name that has come up with Cam Silman Craig and some of the others on the team, including Ben Finiseth, is TJ Branch, right? Really rangy freshman, tough. It seems to be learning what it means to play free safety at Colorado in a Rob Livingston defense. Had an outstanding spring game. His ability to come downhill and make a short tackle, his ability to read and react, including having a interception off of a tipped pass, is are some of the reasons why I'm really, really high on TJ Branch. If he could add, I think it's like $170, right? 6'3", $170. If he could afford to put another 20 pounds on that frame and show up next year as 190-pound, 6'3" free safety with 2 years in a Rob Livingston system, and he's going to be an absolute problem. So TJ Branch is definitely way, 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 way up my board in terms of gets. And guess what? Colorado went and got him out of Penn State. So Colorado, again, from a recruiting standpoint, is just continuing to get better. And at wide receiver, strap up, put your seatbelt on, because we got some burners at wide receiver, including Quentin Gibson, the Max Prep National Player of the Year. Now, this is another thing that gets downplayed, right? Coach Prime recruited the Max Preps National Player of the Year for 2024, and I think maybe Juju was the Max Prep Player of the Year for the year before. So he has 2 Max Prep National Players of the Year in back-to-back recruiting cycles, even though, Juju and Quentin are starting at the same time. Juju won the year before, and I believe Juju is an early enrollee. So in his final season in high school, Quentin Gibson put up 2,009 receiving yards and 36 touchdowns, and he wasn't doing this against slouches, right? This is the highest level of high school football in the state of Texas, and he was putting up these numbers against the best of the best defenses and defensive players in the country. And so watch out for Quentin Gibson. That wide receiver room is loaded. However, he's one of those players where you just have to find a way to get the ball into his hands. And getting the ball into his hands in his freshman season is also going to give him the experience that he needs to have the kind of sophomore season I know he's capable of. Now, last but not least, in that wide receiver room, I really like Quanell Farrakhan Jr., who picked Colorado over Alabama and Texas A&M. And that's just another sign, right? That good players want to play for Coach Prime, and they also want to play with a quarterback like Juju Lewis. You cannot understate why a highly touted, highly talented offensive wide receivers or running backs would want to come to Colorado just to play with Juju Lewis. And so Quanell is another guy I'm watching for. He's also a punt returner. So I think we're going to see him this season on the field as a punt returner for sure. And there's no doubt about it. He's going to have to earn his right to be on the field as a wide receiver because that wide receiver room is pretty deep. So this class, this 2025 class, is not just hype, right? There are real players here who will be contributing early and helping build out this championship roster, in my opinion. So bringing it all together, we got a program on the rise under Coach Prime, a proven culture shift, a new quarterback room ready to lead in the post-Shedeur era, a defensive line that can dominate, and a recruiting class that's laying the foundation for a powerhouse. Now, here's my prediction. The Colorado Buffaloes finished the 2025 regular season 9-3, and they find themselves in the Big 12 championship game. Yeah, that's right. I'm going out right now, right after spring ball, and I'm calling it 9 wins in 2025. This is the year the Buffs continue to put it all together, improve coaching, better talent, better depth, and truly a winning identity in Boulder. This team isn't just looking for respect anymore, which is what it felt like they were trying to do for the first 2 years. I think this year they're coming for a ring. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. Go ahead and hit the like, the subscribe, and comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think. If you think they will get to 9 wins, if you think my analysis is accurate, or maybe I might be off. It doesn't matter. I'd love to interact with you in the chat. All right. Until next time, peace.